Joe, the last message of Gaza's journalist Anas al-Sharif, a voice silenced, a hero fallen. May he rest in eternal peace, and may his words, like echoes through the rubble, never be forgotten. Before we begin Anas al-Sharif's story, I want to share something important. You won't see many photographs of him in this video. That's not because his image doesn't matter, but because many of the available photos are copyrighted. Out of respect for those rights and to ensure this story can be shared widely without restrictions, I've chosen not to use them. But here's what matters most. Anas al-Sharif's legacy was never about how he looked. It was about his words, his courage, and his unshakable commitment to truth. His voice carried further than any photograph ever could. And today, it's that voice and the sacrifice behind it that we honor.
If these words reach you, know that Israel has succeeded in killing me and silencing my voice. Don't forget Gaza.
Those were the final words of Anas al-Sharif, a 28-year-old journalist whose last message wasn't about himself, but about truth. A message that would echo far beyond his grave. The making of a voice. Anas was born in 1997 in Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp, one of Earth's most densely populated places, where over 100,000 people live packed into just 1.4 square kilometers. Growing up surrounded by concrete walls and razor wire, watching families struggle for basic necessities, Anas understood something most journalists only study: what it means when survival itself becomes news. From childhood, he was drawn to stories, not the grand narratives of politics, but the quiet heroism of mothers finding food during blockades, of children playing football in rubble-filled streets, of communities that refused to be broken. At Al-Aqsa University, studying mass communication, Anas learned the technical skills, but the heart of his journalism was already formed. He started as a volunteer at a small media network, working with outdated equipment, often by candlelight when the power was cut. His raw talent was undeniable. By his late 20s, he was reporting for Al Jazeera Arabic, becoming the voice that brought northern Gaza into living rooms across the Arab world. Colleagues called him the voice of northern Gaza, but to his community, he was simply Anas, their neighbor with a camera who refused to let their stories die in silence. Here's what made Anas different. He couldn't leave. Foreign correspondents parachute in, report for weeks or months, then return to safety. Anas lived the story he covered. When airstrikes hit apartment buildings, those were his neighbors' homes. When families mourned, he often knew their names, their children, their dreams. This wasn't just proximity, it was profound responsibility. Every story carried the weight of his community's survival. His reporting became raw, emotional, unflinchingly human. Sometimes viewers watched him break down on camera, tears streaming as he described scenes no human should witness. Critics called it unprofessional. They were wrong. Those tears were journalism at its most honest, showing the world that behind every casualty figure was a universe of loss, witnessed by someone who understood that loss intimately. The price of speaking? But truth-telling in conflict zones carries a death sentence. Beginning in 2023, threats against Anas escalated. Israeli military officials publicly accused him of Hamas affiliation, claims made without a shred of evidence, condemned by every major press freedom organization on earth. The Committee to Protect Journalists issued stark warnings. Such rhetoric was a precursor to assassination. Amnesty International sounded alarms. The UN Human Rights Office demanded protection for journalists. The writing was on the wall. written in targeting language that history has taught us to recognize. Anas knew. In his final broadcasts, you could hear it in his voice, not fear, but grim acceptance. "We may be killed at any moment," he said, his voice breaking. "But our duty is to keep telling the truth." That duty would cost him everything. On August 10th, 2025, at approximately 2:30 a.m., an Israeli airstrike obliterated a media tent near al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. The explosion killed Anas al-Sharif instantly, along with his Al Jazeera colleagues Mohammed Kreike, correspondent, Ibrahim Zaha and Mohammed Nufal, cameraman, and Moamen Aliwa, a freelance cameraman, as well as their driver. May they all rest in peace. And may their families find strength in knowing they did not die in vain. They died as heroes, carrying cameras instead of weapons, determined to show the world Gaza's truth, even when it cost them everything. Let us remember them not only as victims, but as the forgotten voices behind the camera, whose courage ensured the world would see what others wanted hidden. Al Jazeera immediately called it what it was: a targeted assassination. Israeli officials offered their standard response: militants were nearby. No evidence, no investigation. Just another journalist's life reduced to collateral damage in the machinery of war. But Anas had seen this coming. Days earlier, sensing the walls closing in, he recorded a farewell message. Not to journalism, not to his career, but to his children, Sham and Salah. A father's plea, knowing the inevitable was near.
This is my will and my final message. If these words reach you, know that Israel has succeeded in killing me and silencing my voice. Do not forget Gaza, and do not forget me in your sincere prayers for forgiveness and acceptance.
Anas al-Sharif was more than a journalist. He was a father, a husband, and a son of Gaza. He is survived by his wife and their two young children, a son and a daughter, who will grow up carrying the legacy of his courage and sacrifice. For Anas, journalism was never just a profession. It was a duty to truth, to his people, and to the future his children deserve. His last words were not only for Gaza, but for them, and for every child who deserves to live free, to dream, and to be remembered. As we remember Anas, we also remember the family he left behind. His story lives on through them and through us, as we refuse to let his voice be silenced. Even in the shadow of death, Anas's final thoughts were of bearing witness, a duty that outlives any one journalist. His murder is not an isolated act. It belongs to a long, brutal tradition of silencing truth tellers when their message becomes unbearable. From Ida B. Wells documenting lynchings in America and fleeing death threats, to Anna Politkovskaya exposing war crimes in Chechnya before being assassinated, to Jamal Khashoggi, murdered and dismembered for criticizing power. Anas now stands among them, another voice taken too soon, yet part of a lineage that refuses to be erased. In every era, in every conflict, those who shine light into darkness pay with their freedom, their safety, their lives. The weapons change, the uniforms change, the justifications change, but the pattern remains. Silence the witness, control the narrative. The voice that endures? They killed Anas al-Sharif's body. They cannot kill what he represented. Press freedom isn't preserved by constitutions or international law. It's protected by individuals who choose courage over safety, truth over comfort. Anas stood on Gaza's front lines not with weapons, but with a camera and an unshakable commitment to bearing witness. His voice joined a chorus that tyrants have tried to silence for centuries. But here's what they never understand. Truth doesn't die with the truth teller. It multiplies, it echoes, it finds new voices. Anas al-Sharif's final words weren't really final, they were a beginning, a call that reaches across borders, languages, and time. Don't forget Gaza. We won't forget Anas. We won't forget Gaza. And we won't forget you. Here lies a voice silenced, but never erased. In memory of Anas al-Sharif and every journalist who chose truth over safety. Rest in power, young king. Anas al-Sharif gave his life for truth. Let's honor his voice by keeping it alive. Share this video, leave your thoughts below, and subscribe so these stories never fade into silence.